The crystal flute sang a high, nervous note against my silver tray as I navigated the dense crowd. My simple black uniform was a void amidst the shimmering gowns and bespoke tuxedos, a shadow moving between constellations of wealth. The annual Devereaux Foundation fundraiser was in full force. The grand ballroom of Chicago's Drake Hotel, a glittering ocean of power and privilege I could only observe from the shore. Ornate chandeliers dripped golden light onto the polished marble, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive florals and entitlement. "Pardon me," I whispered, a formality for my own benefit, as no one shifted. To them, I was part of the scenery, a cog in the machine that ensured their evening flowed without interruption. My feet screamed in the company-issued heels, the sixth hour of standing a slow, grinding torture. But this job was a lifeline. The overdue notice from the pediatric specialist tucked in my apartment wasn't going to pay itself. "Champagne, sir?" I held out the last glass to a man whose diamond cufflinks were probably worth more than my car. He took it without a glance. "That's the last of the Veuve, Amara," said Mateo, another server, as he passed with a tray of empty canapé plates. "Ms. Dubois needs you to check on the VIP mezzanine. They're getting low on the special vintage." I fought back a sigh and nodded. The mezzanine was the raised platform at the far end of the ballroom, cordoned off by velvet ropes and watched over by men whose tailored suits failed to conceal the bulk of their sidearms. It was the inner sanctum, a place I had instinctively avoided all evening. "On my way," I said, tucking away a stray braid that had escaped my severe bun. As I headed toward the service bar to retrieve the pricey champagne, my eyes were drawn to the glass doors that opened onto a terrace. A 5-minute break. That was all I craved. Just 5 minutes to breathe air that wasn't heavy with judgment and perfume. I scanned the room. Ms. Dubois, the event coordinator, was in a deep, placating conversation with one of the hotel managers. The other servers were focused on the upcoming dinner service. No one would miss me for a few moments. The cool breeze off Lake Michigan was a benediction on my tired face as I slipped outside. The city spread out below, a brilliant tapestry of light woven against the deep indigo of the night sky. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath and feeling the knot of tension in my shoulders begin to loosen. "Shouldn't you be working?" The voice was deep, laced with an accent I couldn't quite place, and it made me jump. I whirled around, my worn heels skidding on the slick stone. He was cloaked in the shadows near the far wall, the red ember of a cigarillo glowing in the dark. I couldn't see his face, but his silhouette was imposing. Tall and broad-shouldered in a suit that was clearly custom-made. He wasn't one of the regular guests I'd been serving. All night, this man radiated a different kind of power, something more dangerous. "I'm sorry, sir, I stammered, inching back toward the ballroom doors. Stealing a moment to feel human, he finished for me, his tone surprisingly gentle. "You don't need to apologize for that." He stepped into the soft light spilling from the ballroom, and my breath caught in my throat. He was older than me, perhaps in his late 30s, with olive skin and dark hair swept back from a face that seemed carved from marble. A strong jaw, a straight nose, and eyes so dark they seemed to drink the light. But it was the scar, a thin, pale line that cut from his right temple to the corner of his mouth that made my heart hammer against my ribs. I knew who he was instantly. Everyone in Chicago knew of Dante Moretti, or at least they knew the whispers. The businessman whose empire stretched far beyond legitimate enterprises. The man whose name was spoken in hushed tones even by the powerful people inside. "I should get back," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, taking one last draw from his cigarillo before extinguishing it with precise, deliberate movements. "Of course." His dark eyes lingered on me, assessing, as if committing me to memory. "What's your name?" My instinct screamed at me to run, to melt back into the anonymity of the crowd, but refusing him felt like an impossibility. Amara, Amara Jones. He repeated my name softly, Amara, as if tasting the sound of it. Go on then. Don't let me keep you from your duties. I retreated back into the ballroom, my pulse throbbing in my ears. The brief encounter had left me profoundly unsettled. I hurried to the service bar, loading my tray with flutes of a vintage champagne that cost more per bottle than I earned in a month. The VIP mezzanine loomed before me. 3 large tables were occupied by men in bespoke suits, and women adorned with jewels. At the center table, now joined by 2 men who looked more like bodyguards than guests, sat Dante Moretti. He must have come inside while I was fetching the champagne. I moved toward his table with caution, offering the drinks with a practiced smile that felt brittle. I kept my gaze lowered, focusing on the polished wood and the hands that reached for the glasses, hands with heavy rings and manicured nails, emanating the faint scent of expensive cologne. Miss Jones. Hearing my name spoken in his voice froze me. I lifted my head to meet those dark eyes again. He remembered. Of course he remembered. Sir, I managed. You have a smudge, he said, gesturing to the corner of his own mouth. Mortified, I swiped at my face with a napkin, feeling the smear of lipstick. Thank you, I mumbled. A flicker of a smile touched his lips and was gone. I turned to make my escape, desperate to be anywhere else when my heel caught on the edge of the thick rug. I stumbled, and the remaining glasses on my tray tilted. I overcorrected, watching in horror as a single flute tipped over, its pale gold contents arcing through the air and landing squarely in the lap of the woman seated next to Dante Moretti. "You clumsy fool!" she shrieked, jumping to her feet as the champagne soaked her scarlet silk gown. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" The entire mezzanine fell silent. Every eye was on our table. Ms. Dubois was already rushing over, her face a mask of professional dread. "I am so sorry," I gasped, setting down the tray and fumbling for more napkins. "Please, let me—" "Don't you dare touch me!" The woman slapped my hand away. She was beautiful in a cold, sharp way, with blonde hair in an intricate chignon and diamonds sparkling at her throat. Her features were contorted with fury. "You're fired! Do you hear me? I will personally see to it that you never work in this city again." Ms. Dubois arrived, a torrent of apologies and offers to pay for the cleaning. I stood there, frozen, watching my livelihood disintegrate. Without this job, I couldn't make rent. I couldn't pay for Leo's specialized physical therapy. I couldn't keep my son healthy. "That's enough, Isabella." Dante's voice sliced through the tension. He hadn't raised it, but the sheer authority in his tone silenced everyone. "It was an accident." "Look what she did to my gown, Dante," Isabella protested, though her voice had lost its venomous edge. Dante's expression remained unchanged. "Sal will escort you to the hotel's cleaners." He gave a subtle nod, and one of his men stepped forward, gesturing for Isabella to accompany him. She looked as if she wanted to argue but visibly thought better of it. After shooting me one last withering glare, she stalked away. "Ms. Dubois," Dante continued, his tone polite but firm, "I believe your staff is stretched thin tonight. Perhaps Miss Jones could take a moment to compose herself." Ms. Dubois blinked. "Of course, Mr. Moretti. Amara, take 15 minutes in the staff room." I couldn't process what was happening. Instead of being fired, I was being given a break. I mumbled my thanks and backed away from the table, feeling Dante's gaze on me all the way across the room. In the quiet of the break room, I splashed cold water on my face. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. That woman, Isabella, could still get me fired. Even if she didn't, the humiliation of the incident would follow me. When my 15 minutes were up, I trudged back to the ballroom, fully expecting to be relegated to the dish pit for the rest of the night. Instead, Ms. Dubois intercepted me, her expression unreadable. "Amara, you're needed in the presidential suite." "The presidential suite?" I repeated. That was the hotel's most exclusive set of rooms, reserved for dignitaries and billionaires. "Why?" "Mr. Moretti has personally requested your service for the rest of the evening." A cold dread trickled down my spine. "What kind of service?" "Serving drinks to his private party," Ms. Dubois clarified, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. I told him we couldn't spare the staff, but he was insistent. He said he would pay triple your hourly rate for the inconvenience. Triple. The number echoed in my mind. That would cover Leo's upcoming doctor's visit and our groceries for the month. "You don't have to go," Ms. Dubois added in a low voice. "I can say you weren't feeling well." But we both knew that wasn't an option. Nobody said no to Dante Moretti. Not Ms. Dubois, not the hotel manager, and certainly not a broke single mother with a mountain of bills. "It's fine," I said, forcing a confidence I didn't feel. "I'll go." Ms. Dubois nodded, relief and worry warring on her face. "Suite 2500, take the service elevator." She paused. "Amara, be careful." The elevator ride to the 25th floor felt like an eternity. Each soft chime announcing a passing floor was a step closer to something I couldn't define. There was fear, of course, but it was mingled with a dangerous curiosity, a pull toward the unknown. The hallway of the top floor was silent, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of my footsteps. I found the double doors of Suite 2500 and raised my hand to knock, taking a steadying breath before my knuckles made contact. The door swung open before I could touch it. A man I recognized as one of Dante's security detail stood there, his face impassive as he looked me over. "Miss Jones." It wasn't a question. They were waiting for me. He stepped aside, and I walked into a suite that was larger than my entire apartment building floor. An elegant foyer opened into a vast living area with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking panorama of the glittering city. Several men in dark suits were scattered around the room, some in quiet conversation, others looking up at my arrival. And there, standing by the windows with his back to me, was Dante Moretti. Even from behind, his presence dominated the space. He turned as I entered, his dark eyes finding mine instantly. "Miss Jones," he said, gesturing for me to come forward. "Thank you for joining us." As I walked toward him, every instinct I had screamed that I was stepping into a trap from which I couldn't escape. The room was charged with unspoken power and hidden agendas. I had no idea why I was there, why he had singled me out. I only knew that somewhere between the spilled champagne and this moment, my life had taken a sharp, perilous turn, and Dante Moretti, the most dangerous man in Chicago, was now looking at me as if I were something of immense value, something he had every intention of claiming. "You seem on edge," Dante observed, his voice low enough for only me to hear. The suite was filled with the low murmur of conversation and the clinking of ice, in heavy crystal glasses, but in that moment, it felt as if we were the only two people in the room. "I'm not entirely sure why I'm here," I admitted, hating the tremor in my voice. A small smile touched the corner of his mouth, the one not marked by the scar. "To serve drinks, just as Ms. Dubois explained," he said, gesturing to a fully stocked private bar in a corner of the suite. "My associates have a preference for scotch over champagne. Can you handle that?" A wave of relief washed over me. It was just a serving job, normal duties. I nodded, probably too eagerly. "Of course." "Good." He stepped a fraction closer, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne with notes of leather and something darker, more elemental. And perhaps to satisfy a curiosity of my own. Before I could ask what he meant, he turned to speak to one of his men, effectively dismissing me. I retreated to the bar, focusing on the familiar ritual of pouring drinks to calm my racing heart. The bottles of single malt scotch lined up on the counter were worth more than I made in 6 months, their amber liquid glowing under the soft lights. As I worked, I stole cautious glances around the room. These were not just business partners. The deference they showed Dante, the coiled tension in their postures, these were his lieutenants, men who answered to him, who feared him. I counted 7 of them, besides Dante, plus the 2 guards by the door who remained as still as statues. I began to circulate with a tray of scotch, offering fresh drinks and clearing away empty glasses. The men mostly ignored me, their conversations dropping to a hush as I approached and resuming once I moved away. I caught snippets about union negotiations, shipping containers, and a territory dispute with someone named Gallagher. One man, younger than the others, with sharp, hungry eyes, followed my movements with unsettling intensity. When I offered him a drink, his fingers deliberately brushed against mine. "Grazie, Bella," he murmured, his gaze sliding down my uniform in a way that made my skin crawl. I pulled back quickly, bumping into the solid form behind me. I smelled the leather and sandalwood before I turned. Dante. "Luca," he said quietly, his hand coming to rest on my shoulder in a gesture that was both reassuring and possessive. "Miss Jones is here to serve drinks, not to entertain you." The younger man's expression shifted from defiance to fear before he forced a tight smile. "Of course, my apologies." Dante's hand lingered on my shoulder for a moment longer than necessary before he moved away, rejoining his conversation by the window. The protective gesture was confusing. Was it genuine concern for me, or was he simply marking his territory? The next hour passed in a haze of serving and trying to become invisible. I overheard fragments of discussions, real estate acquisitions on the South Side, problems with the Irish mob, arrangements for a e-com delivery arriving at the port of Chicago. It was a language I didn't understand and didn't want to learn. As the night deepened, the group began to thin out. Men left with respectful nods to Dante until only he, the younger man Luca, and the 2 security guards remained. The atmosphere shifted from formal business to something more predatory. Luca lounged on a leather sofa, glass in hand, while Dante stood staring out at the city lights. "Get us another round, would you, Bella?" Luca called out, his earlier reprimand seemingly forgotten. I went to the bar, acutely aware of his eyes on me as I prepared the drinks. When I brought his over, he patted the cushion next to him. "Sit down. Relax for a minute." "I should stand," I said. "I said sit," he repeated, his tone hardening. I perched on the very edge of the sofa, keeping as much distance as I could. The guards stared straight ahead, their faces blank. "So," Luca drawled, swirling his scotch, "what's a beautiful woman like you doing waiting tables? Shouldn't you be in college or something?" "I was," I said, my gaze fixed on my hands, which were clenched in my lap. "I had to leave." "Let me guess. Money?" I nodded, not wanting to explain about Leo's rare neuromuscular disorder, the endless specialist appointments, the therapy sessions that insurance barely covered, the constant fear of falling behind on payments that were essential to his quality of life. "I could help you with that," Luca said, sliding closer. His breath was sharp with alcohol. "A girl like you, there are better ways to earn a living than carrying trays." My stomach twisted. "I should see if Mr. Moretti needs anything." Luca's hand shot out and clamped around my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "Don't be rude, Bella. I'm making you an offer." "The lady isn't interested, Luca." Dante's voice was as cold as the lake in winter. He hadn't turned from the window, but his command was absolute. Luca released my wrist instantly, leaning back with a forced laugh. "Just talking, Dante. Getting acquainted." "Miss Jones." Dante finally turned, his expression unreadable. "Would you join me for a moment?" It was not a request. I stood, a wave of relief and new anxiety washing over me as I crossed the room to where he stood. Behind me, I heard Luca mutter something in Italian, too low for me to catch. Ignore him, Dante said as I reached his side. Luca's ambition outpaces his intelligence. It's why he'll never be more than what he is. He said it just loudly enough for Luca to hear, a public dressing down that made the younger man's face flush with rage. Dante gestured to a door on the far side of the suite. Walk with me. I hesitated, my eyes darting toward the main exit, which now seemed miles away. Just to the balcony, Dante clarified, easily reading my fear. Where the hotel security cameras can see us. If it makes you feel better. It didn't. Not really. But I followed him through the door, which led into what was clearly the master bedroom of the suite, a cavernous space dominated by a massive bed and more panoramic windows. Dante walked past the bed without a glance, heading directly for the glass doors that opened onto a private terrace. The cool night air was a welcome relief. This balcony was even higher than the one at the ballroom, the city lights stretching out to meet the black expanse of Lake Michigan. It's beautiful, isn't it? Dante said, his accent more pronounced as he gazed at the view. I've always loved this city, even when it was trying to kill me. I didn't know how to respond, so I stayed silent, maintaining a careful distance. Below us, cars moved like tiny, glowing insects. I wondered how many of the businesses in those glittering towers paid tribute to the man standing next to me. Why did you have to leave university, Amara? He asked, startling me with the personal question and the use of my first name. My son got sick, I answered, the familiar ache tightening my chest. He has a chronic condition. The medical bills, they were too much. Dante nodded, as if this was what he'd expected. The American dream, he said, his tone laced with cynicism. So beautiful, so cruel. He turned to face me, his intense gaze making me want to look away. And the boy's father? Not in the picture, I said flatly. It's just me and Leo. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. He's in a good care program now. The therapy is helping, but it's expensive. I didn't add that good was relative, and that we were always one unexpected bill away from losing even that. Noble, Dante said, and I couldn't tell if he was being sincere or sardonic. Family is everything, those who abandon it. He shook his head, a flicker of genuine disgust in his eyes. Men like your son's father deserve nothing. The vehemence in his voice was startling. For a second, the mask of control slipped, revealing something raw and personal. Then it was gone. What were you studying? He asked, changing the subject. Social work, I said, a bitter smile twisting my lips. I wanted to help kids. You want to help people? I want to make enough money to take care of my son, I corrected him. He laughed then, a low, genuine sound. Practical. I respect that. His gaze drifted back to the city. Do you know who I am, Amara? My heart rate quickened. Everyone in Chicago knows who you are, Mr. Moretti. Dante, he corrected. And what is it that everyone knows? I swallowed hard. That you're a powerful man. That you have diverse business interests. Another short laugh. A diplomatic answer. Others would say I am a gangster, a monster who preys on the weak. He looked directly at me. Is that what you think I am? Every cell in my body screamed at me to lie, to say whatever he wanted to hear. But something in his dark gaze demanded the truth, as if he would know instantly if I tried to deceive him. I think, I said carefully, that people do what they have to do to survive, and that sometimes protecting your family means making choices that other people can't understand. His eyes widened slightly in genuine surprise. For a long moment he just stared at me, the silence between us charged and heavy. Why am I really here? I finally asked, unable to stand the tension. It isn't just to serve scotch. Dante turned back to the view, his profile sharp against the skyline. No, he agreed. It isn't. He paused, choosing his words. I saw something in you, something I recognized. What? I asked, genuinely confused. Hunger, he said simply. The kind you only get from having nothing, from fighting for every inch. He glanced at me. I grew up with less than nothing, in a part of this city where the police didn't go, where the only way out was to become the thing that everyone else feared. I didn't know what to say to this unexpected glimpse behind his formidable facade. I have a proposition for you, he continued. My stomach plummeted. I had heard enough stories about Dante Moretti to know that his propositions were not the kind decent people accepted. I'm not, I started, panic rising. Not what you're thinking, he interrupted, a hint of amusement in his tone. I need someone to manage my personal household. My previous assistant recently departed under unfortunate circumstances. The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. I need someone intelligent, discreet, and with no connections to my other business affairs. Someone who understands loyalty. His eyes held mine. The position pays $15,000 a month. It also includes a comprehensive health insurance plan that would cover all of your son's medical needs at the finest facility in the Midwest. The number hit me like a physical blow. $15,000 a month. It was an impossible sum. Enough to pay for Leo's treatments, to get us out of debt, to give my son a future. What would I have to do? I asked, hating how tempted I was, how that number had already started to erode my principles. Manage my schedule, coordinate the household staff, handle my personal correspondence. Occasionally, you would accompany me to social functions like the one tonight. He shrugged, as if describing a normal corporate job. Nothing illegal, nothing that would compromise your integrity. I didn't believe him for a second. There had to be a catch. Why me? You know nothing about me. I know enough, he said cryptically, and my judgment of character is rarely flawed. The wind picked up, cutting through my thin uniform. Dante noticed, and in one fluid motion, he shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. The weight of it, the lingering warmth from his body, and his scent surrounding me felt dangerously intimate. You don't have to decide now, he said, reaching into the inside pocket of the jacket he'd just given me and pulling out a simple, elegant business card. Think about it. Call this number when you have an answer. I took the card. It was heavy stock, embossed with only a phone number. No name. And if I say no? His expression didn't change, but a coldness entered his eyes. Then you go back to serving champagne and struggling to pay your son's medical bills until his condition worsens, and he's relegated to a state-run facility where he will receive substandard care, and his quality of life will diminish to nothing. The brutal, accurate assessment stole the air from my lungs. I took a step back, my legs hitting the balcony railing. How do you? I make it my business to know things, Amara. He moved closer, erasing the space I had tried to create. I can be a very powerful ally or a very dangerous enemy. The choice is yours. Words failed me. This wasn't a choice. It was a command wrapped in the illusion of an offer. The sound of the balcony door sliding open saved me from having to respond. One of the security guards stepped out. Sir, Mr. Gallagher is on the line. He says it's urgent. Dante's jaw tightened. Tell him I will call him in 5 minutes. The guard nodded and retreated. I should get back to work, I said, seizing the opportunity to escape. I started to shrug off his jacket, but his hand on my arm stopped me. Keep it for now, he said. You can return it when you come to give me your answer. I haven't agreed to anything. Not yet, he said, his voice laced with absolute confidence. He knew my situation. He knew I had no other options. But you will. I left the hotel that night with Dante Moretti's jacket draped around me like a shield and a shroud. His business card felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket, and the weight of his impossible offer settled on my chest, heavy and suffocating. The city bus rattled and swayed as I stared out at the rain-streaked window, the neon lights of downtown Chicago blurring into a watercolor painting. $15,000 a month. The numbers spun in my mind, a siren song of temptation and terror. With that money, I could get Leo into the experimental treatment program his doctor had mentioned, the one with promising results but a price tag that was beyond astronomical. I could pay off our debts. I could breathe. All I had to do was chain my life to Dante Moretti, a man whose name made other powerful men tremble, whose empire was rumored to be built on fear and blood. The bus hissed to a stop 3 blocks from my apartment. I clutched Dante's jacket tighter as I stepped into the downpour. The expensive wool repelled the rain in a way my own thin coat never could. Another stark reminder of the chasm between our worlds. My building was a shabby 5-story walk-up in Pilsen, its security a broken intercom and a front door that never latched. It had been our home for 3 years, ever since I'd had to sell my mother's small house to cover the first round of Leo's medical expenses. I climbed the 4 flights of stairs, each step an effort after a 10-hour shift. The familiar smell of damp concrete and frying onions greeted me as I unlocked the door to our small apartment. 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely large enough for 1 person, and a bathroom with a perpetually dripping faucet. But it was ours, for now. I hung Dante's jacket on the back of a kitchen chair, where it looked absurdly out of place, then sank onto my worn-out sofa, too exhausted to change out of my uniform. The night's events replayed in my mind. The spilled champagne, Isabella's fury, Dante's dark eyes, his proposition on the terrace. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me from a light, uneasy sleep. The gray light of dawn was filtering through the blinds. I fumbled for the phone, my heart lurching, expecting it to be Ms. Dubois calling to fire me. "Hello?" I said, my voice thick with sleep. "Amara Jones?" It was a man's voice, professional and clipped. "Yes. This is Dr. Chen from the pediatric clinic. I'm calling about your son, Leo." My blood ran cold. "What is it? Is he okay?" "He's stable," the doctor assured me quickly. "But his latest test came back. There's been some significant muscle deterioration in his legs." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "What does that mean?" "It means the current therapy regimen is no longer sufficient. We need to be more aggressive." He paused. "There is an experimental gene therapy treatment. It's shown incredible promise, but it's not covered by your insurance plan." Of course it wasn't. Nothing that could actually save my son ever was. "How much?" I whispered, the words scraping my throat. The initial round of infusions would be $45,000. The room seemed to tilt. 45,000. It might as well have been $1 million. "Miss Jones? Are you there?" "Yes," I breathed. I'll figure it out." "Can I bring him in today?" "Of course. I have an opening at 3 this afternoon." After I hung up, I sat in the dim morning light, my gaze fixed on the jacket draped over the chair. Dante Moretti's business card was still in the pocket. 1 phone call, and all my financial problems would vanish. 1 phone call, and I would be willingly walking into a cage, even if it was a gilded one. What choice did I really have? I showered and dressed in my only decent outfit, black pants and a simple blouse, and headed for the clinic. The rain had stopped, but the sky was a sheet of steel gray. The clinic was clean but crowded, the waiting room filled with worried parents and restless children. The air smelled of antiseptic and quiet desperation. I found Leo in the physical therapy room, working with his therapist, his small face scrunched in concentration as he tried to walk between parallel bars. His legs, once so strong, now trembled with the effort. He was only 7. He should have been running in a park, not fighting for every step in a sterile clinic. His face lit up when he saw me. "Mama," he cried, his smile a beacon of light in my dark world. I hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of his hair and trying to memorize the feeling of his small, warm body in my arms. "How's my superhero doing?" I asked, forcing a cheerful tone. "I'm getting stronger," he said, but I saw the weariness in his eyes, the frustration he tried so hard to hide. An hour later, I sat across from Dr. Chen in his small office, Leo playing quietly with a tablet in the corner. "His condition is progressing faster than we anticipated," Dr. Chen said, his expression somber. "The standard treatments are only slowing it down, not stopping it." "But the new treatment," I said, clinging to that sliver of hope, "the gene therapy. It has the potential to halt the progression, possibly even reverse some of the damage. In clinical trials, the success rate is over 80%. He hesitated. "But without insurance, the cost is prohibitive." "I'll get the money," I said, with a conviction that surprised me. Dr. Chen looked at me with pity in his kind eyes. "There are charitable foundations, but the waiting lists are years long. And frankly, Leo doesn't have years." The world narrowed to the space between his words. "How long?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Without this intervention, maybe 6 months before he's permanently wheelchair-bound, a year before the damage becomes irreversible." 6 months. The words were a death sentence for my son's childhood. I left the clinic with a smile plastered on my face, promising Leo we'd get pizza for dinner. I kissed him goodbye, told him I loved him more than anything, and walked out into the cold Chicago afternoon, my decision made. Huddled under the awning of a bus stop, my fingers numb, I pulled Dante's card from my wallet. The elegant black numbers stared up at me, an offer of salvation from a man who was likely the devil himself. I dialed the number before I could lose my nerve. A woman answered on the second ring. "Yes?" Her voice was crisp and formal. "My name is Amara Jones. I need to speak with Mr. Moretti. He made me an offer last night." There was a brief pause. "One moment." The line was silent for so long I thought she had hung up. Then his voice came on the line, that distinctive accent wrapping around my name like a physical touch. "Amara, I'm glad you called." I closed my eyes, the city noise fading away. "I accept your offer." Another pause. "Excellent." He didn't sound surprised. He sounded as if he'd known all along what my answer would be. "I will send a car for you tomorrow morning at 8. Pack what you need for an extended stay." "Extended stay?" I echoed, alarm cutting through my resignation. "You didn't say anything about living arrangements." "The position requires you to be available at all times. There are private quarters for you at my residence." His tone was non-negotiable. "Is that a problem?" "Yes." I wanted to scream. "Yes. It's a problem to abandon my life and move into the home of a man whose reputation precedes him like a storm front." "No," I said instead, thinking of Leo, of 6 months that could become a lifetime of health. "No problem." "Good. We will discuss the details tomorrow." He paused. "And Amara? You've made a wise decision." The line went dead. I spent the night packing my life into 2 suitcases and a few cardboard boxes. Clothes, books, the framed photo of Leo on his first day of school. I called Ms. Dubois and resigned, offering no explanation for my sudden departure. I paid my last month's rent and arranged for my meager furniture to be put in storage. By dawn, I had effectively erased myself from the world I knew. At 8 o'clock sharp, a gleaming black Bentley pulled up to my building. A man with a face like a stone carving got out. He introduced himself only as Sal, loaded my bags into the trunk, and held the rear door open for me. "Where are we going?" I asked as we drove away from my neighborhood for the last time. "Mr. Moretti's residence," Sal replied, his eyes on the road. "In Lake Forest." Lake Forest. The exclusive, old-money suburb on the North Shore, a world of sprawling estates and manicured lawns, a universe away from my cramped apartment and the sterile halls of the clinic. We drove for nearly an hour, the city giving way to winding roads, shaded by ancient oak trees and hidden behind imposing gates. Finally, we turned down a private lane and approached a mansion that was more fortress than home. Gray stone walls rose 3 stories high, with arched windows and a slate roof. The grounds were immaculate, a sea of green lawn and artful gardens surrounded by a dense forest that promised absolute privacy. I saw security cameras mounted discreetly on trees and guards patrolling the perimeter. Sal pulled up to a massive oak door. Before the car had fully stopped, the door opened and an older woman emerged. She was tall and slender, dressed in a severe black dress, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun. Her expression as she watched me get out of the car was one of undisguised suspicion. "Miss Jones," she said, her accent similar to Dante's, but thicker, more old world. "I am Elena Moretti, Mr. Moretti's grandmother, and the manager of this house." I offered my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." She ignored it, her dark eyes so like her grandson's, giving me a cold appraisal. "You will address me as Nonna Elena. Follow me. Dante is waiting for you in his study." Chastened, I followed her into a grand foyer with soaring ceilings, marble floors, and paintings that looked like they belonged in the Art Institute. The decor was masculine and elegant: dark woods, rich leather, a palette of deep grays and blues. It was the taste of inherited power. Nonna Elena led me through a series of hallways to a set of double doors at the back of the house. She knocked once, then entered without waiting for a reply. "The girl is here," she announced, stepping aside. Dante's study was lined with books from floor to ceiling, with a massive mahogany desk and windows that overlooked a formal rose garden. Dante stood with his back to us, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "Thank you, Nonna," he said without turning. "Please show Miss Jones to her rooms after we've spoken." Elena gave a curt nod and left, closing the doors with a soft click that sounded unnervingly final. Dante turned, placing his glass on the desk. He was dressed more casually today in a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his forearms and dark trousers. The scar on his face seemed more prominent in the daylight, a permanent reminder of the violence that shaped him. "Amara," he said, my name sounding different in this place. "Welcome to your new home." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Moretti," I replied formally, clutching my purse like a shield. "Dante," he corrected gently. "There's no need for formality if we're to work together." He gestured to a pair of leather armchairs by the fireplace. "Please, sit." I sat on the edge of the chair as he took the one opposite me. In the light of day, I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint lines of exhaustion around them. "Before we begin," he said, "I want you to know that your son's medical care has been arranged. He will be transferred to the Asher Children's Hospital tomorrow. Dr. Chen has been granted privileges and will continue to oversee his case." I stared at him, stunned. Asher Children's was one of the best pediatric hospitals in the world. "How did you—" "I made a phone call," he said with a shrug, as if it were that simple. "The experimental gene therapy has been approved. All expenses will be covered as part of your compensation." The relief was so overwhelming it made me dizzy. Leo would get the best care. He had a real chance now. "Thank you," I whispered, the words feeling utterly inadequate. Dante waved it away. "It is a business arrangement, Amara. You provide a service, I provide compensation." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Though I am glad it gives you peace of mind." The reminder of our deal brought me back to reality. "What exactly are my duties?" "As I said, you will manage my household and personal schedule," he explained, leaning back in his chair. "Nonna Elena has handled these things for years, but she is returning to Sicily next month. You will train with her, until her departure. She doesn't seem to like me very much, I observed. A smile touched the corner of Dante's mouth. Nonna Elena is suspicious of everyone, especially women under the age of 60 in my home. The way he said it, women in my home, sent a chill through me. What did he expect? As if reading my thoughts, he added, "Your role here is strictly professional, Amara. Whatever you may have heard about my personal life, I do not mix business with pleasure." My face flushed. I wasn't thinking. Yes, you were, he interrupted, a hint of amusement in his voice. And it's a reasonable assumption. But I assure you, your virtue is safe with me. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or strangely disappointed. The thought brought a fresh wave of embarrassment. What was wrong with me? There is one thing we did not discuss last night, Dante continued, his expression growing serious. Discretion. It is the most important part of your job. You will see people come and go who must never be mentioned outside these walls. You will overhear conversations that you must immediately forget. The unspoken threat was clear. I understand. Do you? His gaze was intense, because the consequences for a breach of trust would be severe, not just for you, but for those you care about. My son. He didn't have to say the name. If I betrayed him, Leo's medical care would be the first thing to disappear. I understand, I repeated, meeting his gaze without flinching, despite the fear coiling in my gut. I won't betray you. Dante studied me for a long moment, then seemed satisfied. Good. He stood. Nonna Elena will show you the house and explain your initial duties. You'll begin tomorrow. He pressed a button on an intercom on his desk. Nonna, please come to the study. As we waited, he turned back to me. One more thing. There is a charity fundraiser this Saturday at the Asher Children's Hospital. You will accompany me. As your assistant? I asked. A strange light flickered in his eyes. As my guest. In public, the distinction is important. Before I could ask what he meant, the doors opened and Nonna Elena entered, her expression as cold as before. Show Miss Jones to her quarters, Dante instructed, and begin her training. This way, Miss Jones, she said. I turned to follow her, but Dante's voice stopped me at the door. Amara. I looked back. He was watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Welcome to the family. My new quarters were in the east wing of the mansion, a suite of rooms more luxurious than any hotel I'd ever seen. There was a large bedroom with a sitting area, a walk-in closet, and a marble bathroom. The window overlooked the gardens. This is a lot for a staff member, I said, as Nonna Elena gave me the tour, her high lips thinned. Dante insisted. The last one had a much smaller room in the staff wing. The way she said, the last one, made me wonder again about my predecessor. Your day begins at 6 a.m., she continued briskly. You will review Dante's schedule, prepare his daily briefing, and coordinate with the kitchen. He rises at 7 and expects his briefing by 7:30. She led me on a tour of the labyrinthine house, pointing out the kitchen, the dining rooms, the gym, and the security office, which I was forbidden to enter. The West Wing, she explained, was Dante's private residence, and I was never to enter without a direct invitation. The tour ended in the gardens. The perimeter is heavily secured, she informed me. Do not wander beyond the formal gardens without notifying security. They have orders to shoot on sight. Noted, I swallowed. By the time we returned to the house, my head was swimming with rules and protocols. Dante liked his coffee black. No sugar. He never took calls during dinner. He despised the color yellow. You will need a new wardrobe, Nonna Elena said, her eyes sweeping over my simple clothes with disdain. A car will take you shopping tomorrow. Dante has arranged an account for you. That's not necessary, I started. It is not a request, she cut me off. Your appearance is a reflection on him. Your current wardrobe is inadequate. I bit my tongue. Antagonizing this woman would only make my life harder. Dante has meetings for the rest of the day, she said, checking a delicate watch on her wrist. Dinner will be brought to your room tonight. Starting tomorrow, you will dine with him when he is home. I'll be dining with him? I couldn't hide my surprise. He prefers not to eat alone. A flicker of suspicion entered her eyes. Is that a problem? No, of course not, I said quickly. I just wasn't expecting it. Nonna Elena studied me for a long moment. What, exactly, were you expecting, Miss Jones, when a man like my grandson plucks a girl like you from a catering hall and installs her in his home? The implication was insulting and clear. Indignation flared inside me. He told me the position was strictly professional. And you believed him? It was a statement, not a question. Her expression softened, just a fraction, into something that looked like pity. My grandson does not do things without a reason, Miss Jones. Whatever he told you this job is, you will learn the truth of it in time. With that, she left me alone in the grand hallway, her words echoing in the silence. That night, I picked at a dinner of poached salmon and asparagus in my sitting room. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen, confirming Leo's transfer to Asher Children's had been scheduled. At least that part was real. I was living in a beautiful prison, my son's health bought and paid for by a man who was both my savior and my captor. What purpose did I truly serve here? Was I just an assistant? Or was I something else? A pawn in a game I didn't understand. The next few days were a whirlwind. A personal stylist helped me acquire a wardrobe of designer clothes that cost more than I used to make in a year. I learned my duties, managing Dante's complex schedule and coordinating the staff. The work was demanding, but I was a quick study. Dante was exacting but fair, and the rare, brief nod of approval from him was something I found myself craving. I saw him every day, mostly in his study or over dinner, where our conversations were surprisingly normal. We talked about books and politics, never his business. It was as if he lived two separate lives. The sophisticated, intelligent man who debated philosophy with me, and the ruthless crime boss the world feared. The dichotomy was unsettling. Sometimes I could almost forget who he was. Then I would see him take a hushed call in Italian, or notice the way visitors were discreetly ushered in through side doors, and the reality would come crashing back. A week later, I visited Leo at Asher. The hospital was a world away from the clinic. He had a private room with a view of the lake and a team of specialists dedicated to his case. He looked brighter, more energetic than he had in months. "This place is like a hotel, Mama," he said, his eyes wide. "How can we afford it?" "I got a new job, sweetie," I told him, the prepared lie coming easily. "Executive assistant to a very important businessman. The benefits are amazing." "Costello?" he asked, misremembering the name from the news. "Moretti," I corrected. "He owns hotels and things." "Is he nice?" "He's my boss," I said. "And he's making sure you get the best doctors in the world. That's all that matters." My son squeezed my hand. "Just be careful, Mama." Even at 7, he understood more than he should have to. His words, echoing Nonna Elena's, stayed with me. On Saturday evening, I stood before the mirror in my room, dressed in an emerald silk gown that the stylist had chosen. I barely recognized the elegant woman staring back at me. A knock on the door revealed Dante, looking devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. His eyes widened slightly as he took me in. "You look stunning, Amara," he said, the compliment sending a flush of warmth through me. The fundraiser at Asher was even more opulent than the Devereaux Gala. This time, however, I was on Dante's arm, introduced as his associate. The whispers and speculative glances followed us everywhere. They all thought I was his mistress. "Does it bother you?" he asked when I mentioned it, a hint of amusement in his voice. What people think. It's my reputation, I said. People will always talk, Amara, he replied, his hand resting on the small of my back. Their opinions only have the power you give them. Later, A's familiar, unwelcome face appeared across the room. Isabella, the woman from the first gala. She approached us, her smile as sharp as glass. Dante? She purred, before her cold eyes landed on me. And the help. How charming. Amara is my personal assistant now, Dante said, his tone mild but with an underlying warning. How ambitious of her, Isabella sneered. One wonders what skills she used to secure such a promotion. My face burned. Before I could speak, Dante's arm tightened around my waist, pulling me against his side. Be careful, Isabella, he said softly. Your jealousy is unattractive. Jealous of her? She scoffed. Then I suggest you show Miss Jones the respect she is due. Dante's voice was now laced with ice. Unless you want your brother to find himself unemployed. Isabella paled. My apologies, she said stiffly and retreated. I'm sorry about that, Dante said once she was gone. Her family has been trying to arrange a match between us for years. The thought of Dante married to someone so cruel was strangely disturbing. And what do you think of that? I asked. His dark eyes met mine. Marriage in my world is about alliances, not affection, Amara. But I have never been a man who follows tradition. A commotion near the entrance drew our attention. A man was arguing heatedly with security. Dante's expression hardened. Wait here, he said, and moved to intercept them. He spoke quietly with the man, who I now recognized as Gallagher, the name I'd heard his men mention. After a tense exchange, Dante had him escorted out. When he returned, his face was a neutral mask, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. Is everything all right? Just business, he said dismissively. But on the drive home he was silent and grim, his jaw tight. That wasn't just business, I said. He glanced at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. You're observant, a valuable trait. He sighed. There are parts of my world you are safer not knowing, Amara. For your own protection. Protection from what? I pressed. My previous assistant, he said, his voice dropping, learned too much. He made an error in judgment that could not be ignored. A chill went through me. What happened to him? He is no longer a concern, Dante said, his tone closing the subject permanently. Back at the mansion, he walked me to my door. I do not want to frighten you, he said, his voice softer now. But you must understand. In this house, discretion is survival. He studied my face. Do you regret coming here? I thought of Leo, sleeping peacefully in his state-of-the-art hospital room, his body responding to a treatment that was a miracle. I thought of the crushing weight of debt that was no longer mine to bear. No, I said honestly. I don't. A hint of relief crossed his features. Good. Because I did not bring you here on a whim. He hesitated, then reached out and gently brushed a stray curl from my face. I saw something in you that night on the balcony, Amara. A strength I recognized. A loyalty that can't be bought. His touch was like an electric current. How could you know that? Because my survival has depended on my ability to read people, he said simply. And because in you, I saw a reflection of myself. The person I might have been, had things been different. He dropped his hand, stepping back as if catching himself. Good night, Amara. Alone in my room, I touched my cheek where his fingers had been. The professional lines we had drawn were dissolving, replaced by something far more complicated and dangerous. I knew who he was, what he was capable of, yet I was drawn to him, pulled toward a man who could be my salvation or my ruin. In the weeks that followed, I fell into a rhythm. Nonna Elena returned to Sicily, but not before giving me one last piece of advice. He will offer you the world, and he will make it feel like your choice, she had said. Remember, with men like my grandson, there are no real choices, only the illusion of them. Her words echoed in my mind as Dante and I grew closer. Our dinners became less formal, our conversations more personal. He never spoke of the darker side of his life, but it was always there, a shadow in the corner of the room. He started visiting Leo at the hospital, sitting with him for hours, something I only found out from a nurse. He never mentioned it to me. He was a man of profound contradictions, and I found myself falling for all of them. 3 months after I arrived, the illusion shattered. I was in his study late one night when the doors flew open and Lucas stormed in, his face pale with fury. He started shouting at Dante in rapid Italian. I only caught 2 words: Gallagher and traditore, traitor. Dante's face became a mask of cold rage. He responded in a low, sharp tone, then glanced at me. Amara, leave us. I started to gather my things, but Luca's next words, spit out in English, stopped me. She shouldn't be here. You know what happened with Ricardo when he knew too much. Enough, Luca, Dante snapped. Amara has my loyalty. Like Ricardo did? Lucas sneered. Before he started singing to the feds? Ricardo, my predecessor, an informant. I looked at Dante, and in his eyes I saw confirmation. I fled to my room, my heart hammering. An hour later, Dante knocked on my door. He looked exhausted. You heard, he said. It wasn't a question. Ricardo was an FBI informant. Dante nodded. Yes. What did you do to him? I whispered, dreading the answer. He's alive, Dante said, and the relief was so intense my knees felt weak. He's living in New Mexico with a new name. The FBI threatened his family. He made a choice to protect them. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a weary honesty. I do not hurt people for protecting their family, Amara. It is the one law I will never break. It's why I understood your choice to come here. It's why I admire you. The sincerity in his voice broke through my fear. Why did you really hire me, Dante? I asked softly. He moved closer, so close I could feel the heat of his body. The truth? I told you I saw a reflection of myself, but it was more than that. From the moment I saw you on that balcony, I felt a connection, a possibility. A possibility of what? Of not being alone, he said, his voice rough with emotion, of having someone who sees all of me, the man, the monster, and doesn't run. His vulnerability was the final key, unlocking everything I had tried to keep locked away. The fear, the attraction, the growing love. I see you, I whispered. And I'm not running. A storm of emotion crossed his face. Hope, disbelief, desire. He reached for me slowly, giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. Amara, he murmured, my name a prayer. I closed the distance between us, and our lips met in a kiss that was both a surrender and a declaration. It was desperate and hungry and felt like coming home. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. You know what this means, he said, his voice husky. To be with me. I did. It meant embracing his world, with all its darkness and danger. It meant my life would never be simple or safe again. It meant becoming part of a family bound by blood and secrets. I know, I said, my voice steady. I choose you, Dante. All of you. A slow, genuine smile transformed his face, erasing the years of hardness. Then you are mine, he said. Mia, Regina, my queen. In his arms, I knew I had made a choice, real or illusory, that had changed my life forever. I had walked into his world as a servant, invisible and desperate. I would stay as his partner, his confidant, his equal. Whatever storms were coming, We would face them together. In the heart of the lion's den, with the most dangerous man in Chicago, I had finally found where I belonged.